to do a good comic book? Of course, the problem with that is I can't just choose one, because then we've ran into problems before. I have to read it first. That way it doesn't turn out to be Nazi dogs and ducks or whatever it was. All right, let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the 3Cast. I'm your host, Matthew Weber. I'm joined by Vincent Hui.
Hey, what's up?
Ricky's not here. He's off doing something. I don't know what he's doing. I know he had to work through lunch today. That's why we moved the podcast to a nighttime show, but that's okay. So this is Vince's topic this week. So this is the 3Cast. We review movies. We talk about movies. We talk about video games. We're going to do a video game show, I think, coming up before the end of the year when it's just Vince and I. And every once in a while we do comic books, and Ricky's going to have us do a TV show eventually, I think. Wait a minute, that Flashpoint arc is a comic book. Okay. Hopefully he puts that in the drop bucket, because I haven't actually looked for it. Anyways, that's the 3Cast. This time it's Vince's turn to pick a topic. So what was your topic this week, Vince?
All right, basically it's the premise with the onset of the inevitable, well, actually right now, because Thor just came out, the new Thor movie. It was funny because I was just watching all these commercials and trailers for the movies, like at San Diego Comic-Con, and it just dawned on me that there has to be some sort of fatigue, and like a decade from now, people are going to look back at this era and say, holy crap, were they that desperate for ideas? And more importantly, didn't they realize that they're just doing the same thing again and again and again? So the question was just a matter of, are superhero movies really basically losing steam? I mean, right now it's been a huge fad as of the last decade or so. I mean, I would say that the pinnacle, the kind of harbinger of things was the original Iron Man movie way back in the day. I don't even remember how long ago it was. Was it a decade ago? I'd say, where it wasn't a first class. It was basically the real push behind the current status of the Marvel and superhero movies. Yes, we had stuff like X-Men and Superman movies in the past. They didn't get very much traction for some reason or another. And certainly with the various reboots of Batman, they had little flashes in the pan. But now we're seeing something that's a little bit more sustained. And now we're seeing something where it's not actually a one-off thing. It's more episodic. Gone are the days of, like, say, Christopher Reeve in Superman, where it's like, okay, he finishes it in that Superman 1 or 2 or 3. You don't need to rely on a sequel to fulfill more of the story arc. Whereas nowadays, you're effectively paying $20 for a movie ticket, at least in Canada, because it's IMAX, to see an episode in what I'd like to call a proverbial TV series. We've started to see franchises coming in, coming out. Some characters are experiments. Some premises of plots are just put in there just to see and test audiences. There's no question that when you look at stuff like the current state of affairs with the Avengers series and the Marvel series, where they're building up this whole entire Infinity War, which incidentally is a 2-movie series coming out, which basically puts all these movie franchises together. And I should also mention that these movie franchises that are kind of disparate are all going to come together to basically showcase that Disney/Marvel has basically been able to take basically an entire marketplace with a varying audience. You look at movies like your conventional superhero movies, like, say, Iron Man, and then at the same time you find these kind of radical departures like the Guardians of the Galaxy, or even find like the premise of the current state of the Thor movies. The Thor movie as it is right now, like, let's be honest here, I am very impressed, and I think everyone else is very surprised to see movies like, say, Iron Man make it. These are B-level characters which had a certain level of fan following, but let's be honest, you would never think that Iron Man was significantly more of a showcase character than, say, Wolverine, or say, I don't know, Batman or something. But what we see is these, like, B-level characters rising up and becoming something. And when you look at the most current version of Thor, it's really tongue-in-cheek. You can see the humor in the movies, in the trailers. They're not taking themselves all that seriously. And I think that when you see this all coming together, I think you're going to find that audiences are getting very fatigued with this. I don't think people are going to be willing to spend all that much money. And I think you find the competition, like the DC universe, coming out late to the game. You see them trying to emulate the stuff that Marvel's been able to do. And I think they might come across as too little too late. There's a lot of hype in the upcoming Justice League movie that comes out this month. And I think it'll make lots of money, but I think it's also going to mark the decline of the entire superhero franchise, because we have alternatives, like, say, all the stuff that you see on TV, whether it's the Daredevil series, the the Heroes of Tomorrow, or whatever. Like all these other TV series, Green Arrow and the Flash series have been, and Supergirl have been making really good inroads for success. The new the mutant show that's come up has got a certain amount of pickup. But again, we're hitting the super saturation where I don't think the movies are going to be the things that are going to pick it up. I think it's going to be a TV series, and even at that, I think it's going to last for another 5 years before the movie studios will start realizing that it was not a great sustainable model, and they should have actually diversified. So that's just my little soapbox on that one.
Yeah, I agree with you, Vince. Whoa, I'm getting echoes. That's weird. What's going on there?
I don't know. You're so magnetic. The voice is so profound. It just echoes.
It's so fantastic. I need to hear myself twice. Stop that. That's terrible. All right, I think it's gone. Excellent. You hear me? Still hear me, Vince?
Yep.
All right, that was really weird. It was like a perfect echo. I could hear myself, then I'd hear myself again. All right. Anyway, so I agree with you. I think. All right. So you and Ricky are both much more into comics, than I have ever been. I really like comics, but I don't know the lore behind a lot of the characters and stuff. And that even goes. I mean, I'm a Batman guy, right?
Right on.
That's pretty much where my comic book experience has always been. I never was really curious about anything else, and that's the reason why I like the movies, because it was Batman. And there have been terrible Batman movies in the past. I mean, George Clooney as Batman, Chris O'Donnell as Robin, and Arnold Schwarzenegger as was it Mr. Freeze? Dr. Freeze, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there's some really bad movies. Didn't Danny DeVito play the Penguin?
Penguin with Michael Keaton back in Batman Return, or the second one.
Some really bad Batman movies, but it was just, I think it was because it was Batman. It kept me, it's like, okay, so they're kind of terrible, but it's Batman and it's all we had. Sure, we had have some Superman movies, and then they did those really crappy Spider-Man movies with God, I'm really having a hard time with names.
No, those ones with Tobey Maguire. Those were done after the Michael Keaton and the Val Kilmer. Those were done relatively recently. Those were done like 2000.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but they were before the influx of superhero movies that we have now, starting in 2008 when Iron Man came out. Anyways, my point is that before Iron Man, there were relatively few franchises out there. You had X-Men, you had Batman, you had Superman, you had Spider-Man. You had those four. That was pretty much it. And they were fairly self-contained in that, they had, you had your superhero and you had a villain.
Mm-hmm.
That was your movie. You could pretty much tell. I mean, no matter what the plot of the movie was, villain does something terrible, superhero beats his ass. The end. That was the movie, right? And that was every superhero movie. And like you said, now it's much more episodic, where they're but it's more than that. It's more that they're bringing in these minor characters. In Suicide Squad, they had all these characters that I'd never heard of. Except for Harlequin.
Yep.
In Civil War, were tons of characters outside of Captain America and Iron Man that I didn't know the backstories of them because there were so many of them. They couldn't go through and tell you the backstories of these characters because, it would have been 12, 13 hours long.
You don't have to watch the other crappy movies. Like, I know everyone's hyping up, like, remember when people were like, oh yeah, Ant-Man, or oh man, Guardians of the Galaxy. People are like, what the hell, man? That's stupid. But people still ended up watching it. Like, no offense, but I really don't think anyone knew who the hell Black Panther was up until 5 years ago. And the reality is that it seems very suspect that Marvel is purposely putting a lot of money behind Black Panther. I don't think he's a marquee character, but I think it's just an example of how the studio, Marvel/Disney, is trying to experiment and expand its portfolio of audience members and portfolio of movies by saying, look, we have the Guardians of the Galaxy is more the tongue-in-cheek hero movie. We got the Iron Man, which is becoming more and more like the kind of true-to-life, cynical hero kind of movie. And then, of course, you have the Black Panther movie, which is like, let's appeal to another demographic, right? Let's, the underserviced black market, for example, because we need to make sure that we demonstrate that we have this whole spectrum of an audience, right? So I think that more of this kind of experimentation to get larger outreach into different audiences to then pull them into this, Infinity War series, which is going to have this 2-movie cap in the next 3 years.
Yeah. Then there's this. To me, there's always been a barrier to go into these movies in that you kind of have, at least for me. I mean, I know it's not necessarily true, but I've always felt for me that you need some kind of backstory, not a backstory, but some kind of background going into the movie of who the character is. So, going into the Hulk, at least something about the Hulk. If you're going into Iron Man or Batman, something that happened in the books. Whereas I don't know jack shit about Ant-Man. I don't know anything about any of the Guardian of the Galaxy guys. So I'd go into one of these movies and I just wouldn't know anybody. Now, normally in a normal movie that wouldn't matter, but because they're making these episodic, and you want to. That's the difference between a TV show and a movie. In a movie, they make you care about the characters in a set time period, which is 2 hours. That's it. You're not. I mean, obviously you have sequels, but the story is all self-contained in those 2 hours. Whereas with TV shows, you're expecting to be led on from episode to episode, season to season, and you're learning the story throughout. Whereas in a movie, you're supposed to be able to know everything there. So they do a good job in the beginning of Iron Man of showing his backstory. They did a good job when they rebooted Batman with the Batman Begins of showing his backstory. But some of these movies just don't show the backstory, and that's really where I think that them bringing in all these really crazy background characters, can you imagine I'm doing a movie of what's the alligator man's name?
Killer Croc.
Killer Croc. You're doing a movie on Killer Croc. I mean, he's a minor villain in the arcs, and he wouldn't do a very good job of doing a movie. But it seems like something that they would do, even despite the fact that hardly anybody knows who he is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know. There's too many minor characters and there's, like you said, there's just spreading themselves too thin to have. I mean, there's only so many people. I mean, people are always going to be consistently interested in the bigger ones, like the ones where they bring in Robert Downey Jr. I mean, he's like the big name now, right? But I mean, the other characters have kind of become big because of these movies, but it's going to be the biggest movies that are going to draw the big crowds, and they're going to have these big pillars of the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy and Civil War, and then they'll have these minor ones like Ant-Man and Doctor Strange and probably the Captain America ones, because I don't seem to think that those are all that great. They're just so much lower, that kind of lower the quality of everything else around them. Then because they're all connected, if you don't watch those, you're gonna be confused when they all get together and start fighting each other. It's just getting too convoluted. I think that's gonna be the biggest problem for people.
I agree 100%, man, because like and maybe it's a function of just the amalgamation of bigger studios and just getting more properties, like whether it's Disney acquiring all the Marvel or all the Star Wars movies, rights, and then just being able to churn out as much as they can. I think we're, as kind of fanboys, regardless of what level of backstory that we're familiar with, the fact is that we kind of enjoy this stuff, and that's fine. But I think there's a difference between quality and quantity in the output. I think that you're right. Like if you're digging so deep to pull in rather obscure, not even fan favorite characters, but just obscure characters to prove a point, or to access a wider demographic, I think that you're kind of running the risk of diluting the quality of the product. And in the interest of trying to turn a fast profit and have lots more of these movies pumped out, yeah, you're right. You can't burn out like the Hemsworth and Downey Jr. and all those actors, because they can't produce that many movies just physically. That's not possible. So they have to have different properties so that you can alternate between years to have, Avengers this year, Black Panther next year, Thor the year after, and then the next Avengers movie, right? Like I get that, but it just seems like they're just super saturated in the marketplace. They think that I find that I actually miss seeing rather original IPs. Like, I mean, I think we talked about this before with video games, that if you looked at any of the top 10 video games in the last decade, 60 to 70% of all the top games are some permutations of a sequel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that the same thing is true for the movies, to a lesser degree, but I'd still say that, there's no doubt that this year you'll see a Star Wars movie, which is a sequel, is going to be like a blockbuster. The Thor movie, again, a sequel. The Spider-Man, even though it's a homecoming, it's still a variation of a sequel because he showed up in the last Iron Man or Captain America movie, I can't remember, right? But all of these big movies are pretty much driven by the sequel market. And the industry is not stupid. And they're able to go, look, man, I bought the comics, the rights to use the comics, and therefore I got a press of money. I can print money now. And they're just flooding it. And I think it's doing a disservice to the people that really like the comics, and that basically you're getting an inferior product. As much as you like to vote with your dollar, I hate to tell you this, guys, you're basically going to start seeing a thinning out of the quality, and that's my biggest concern. And the other thing that you raised, Matt, was you're saying that you didn't have you're not as geeky in terms of you don't know all the backstories of comic books, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's fine. I think that movies are a really good low barrier to get an access to the character. Like, I mean, there's no way that a guy like, even you probably haven't read every single Batman movie since, Kane put together that idea of this vigilante bat character, right?
Too many arcs.
So there's hundreds. There's so many barriers and so many incarnations and stuff. You're not expecting that. So one good thing about the movies is that they actually put down a version of a story that you can really wrap your head. The good thing with the movies that have been around in the last decade is twofold. A, it really synthesizes a lot of the backstories that you don't have the ability or the wherewithal to buy every single back issue and understand the character. And the second thing is I found that most of the successful movies that pertain to superheroes really talk about the conflicts that are not with the supervillains, but within themselves. So whether it's Batman dealing with this issue of guilt for his parents, or the rationale of why he does what he does, the Superman complex, where Superman is an all-power deity, and yet he is trying to protect the world that really effectively hates him for being so. I mean, the movies that you see now with the superheroes, they really are more introspective. They definitely go back to, a decent synthesis of many of the issues that come out from, the literal hundreds of comic book issues that have preceded the movies. But at the end of the day, I think that in the interest of trying to churn out so many of these movies, we're actually starting to see, no, pardon the term, but the chinks in the armor, right? That's starting to fall apart. And we're going to see a dilution of the quality that's going to come out.
There was one thing we talked about this before. I don't remember what topic we were talking about. But the comparison between TV and Hollywood and movies, in that with TV, it's really based around and books as well, creating a fandom, a thorough following of a group of people who are always going to be, part of that. It's like people who follow. I mean, there have been movies where it's created like a cult following before. Star Wars is one of those ones that you have a group, a community of people that get together at like Comic-Cons and things like that. I think we were talking about the growth. Actually, that was the topic, was the growth of Comic-Cons, right?
Mhm.
Where people are more and more subscribing to individual like movies as things that they follow, things that they participate in a community of fellow fans. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing Disney and all these studios go through and pull characters from other mediums, and to try to take advantage of the whole Comic-Con frenzy by bringing in, having a pre-built, pre-made community of people who already follow and enjoy the character, and then kind of build on the frenzy that would come with the character that's already been established. So I think a lot of it is going to be they bring in more and more characters because they think that they can take advantage of those pre-established communities, right? So because those characters already have a following, they don't have to go through and expend the capital to come up with anything original. It's the reason why video games are the same way. These Call of Duty has a following. It doesn't matter that every Call of Duty is exactly the same. Doesn't have a storyline. Has the same characters just with different names, and bops around like a soap opera. It doesn't matter because people don't buy those for the stories. They buy them because they enjoy that particular style of gameplay. It's the same thing with the characters. They go to these movies because they enjoy the characters, because they've already enjoyed the characters before. The problem comes when they start dipping into the well too deep and come up with characters that, yeah, they have a little bit of a following, but they're not necessarily. I mean, there's a difference between the following of Ant-Man and the following of Iron Man, or even the following of Iron Man and the following of Batman. There's just, I mean, more people are in the community of Batman followers than there are Iron Man, right? So, and as they keep going down into the well to find more and more obscure characters, they're going to find that the communities that they're hoping and planning on being pre-made and pre-built for them is going to be smaller and smaller and smaller. And because they're smaller, then the hype that they're expecting before the movie is released is just going to not be nearly as big as something that had a larger pre-existing community, if that makes sense.
No, it does, but I think that it's not a sustainable model, and I think eventually it's going to kind of eat itself. Like, there's only so much that you can take. Like, I'm not sure if you remember this, but there was a point in the 90s when Arnold Schwarzenegger was in Terminator 2, and he made it huge. And he is also, prior to that, like in Predator and a couple of movies that really put him on the roadmap. And then when he got hyped up after Terminator 2, well, guess what? Every year he was in a new movie, and eventually it became so saturated that there was a point when he was like in like 2 movies a year, and he started losing track.
And they got worse. They got worse and worse.
Yeah, and then eventually
like Kindergarten Cop.
Sorry?
Or Kindergarten Cop, or Junior with Danny DeVito.
Yeah, exactly. So he was in every single movie trying to hit. There's some guy in Hollywood who's like, Schwarzenegger, he's big now, so let's put him in some comedies. Yeah, let's make him pregnant. Yeah, guy guys, we got guys, the 14 to 28-year-old demographic, they're gonna love him in this Last Action Hero. But you know what? Women, we gotta get them. So Schwarzenegger, he's a good deal. So let's put Schwarzenegger with have him baby. Yeah, because that'll be funny. Yeah. And like, oh yeah, put him in a cop movie with kids. Yeah, because kids, we need to get kids. So let's put him in a comedy like that. So as a result, you found that this super saturation of this one character in this case, not as opposed to like a typology of movie, but this character, this person, kind of burned the bridges, and it actually forced Schwarzenegger to kind of step back for a bit to really regain grounding, right? And only within the last, like, I'd say 5 or 6 years that a Schwarzenegger movie has actually been of note when it comes out, and then to a lesser degree, you see the same thing happen with like the Happy Gilmore or whatever the hell, like Adam Sandler movies that come out, right? Like,
yeah, he hasn't done a movie in years now, right? Because he kept, I mean, he did all those comedy movies like right in a row, and now he's just gone. Now I think he's on TV or something with like Kevin James, maybe. I think I saw him on TV.
Because they're all buddies. Yeah, that's the only reason why he still has a job.
Well, his Adam Sandler movies were the epitome of buddy films because all of his buddies were all in his films, like Norm Macdonald and
David Spade and all that stuff.
Crazy Eye Dude, Belushi. What's his name?
No, Belushi. Buscemi.
Buscemi, that's his name. Yeah, Crazy Eye Dude, the guy from Con Air.
Yeah.
And he's in all the movies, It's because they're friends. That was what Adam Sandler did. Maybe that's the reason why he doesn't do any more movies. Maybe he doesn't have any more friends. That'd be sad for him. All right, anything else you want to say on this, Vince?
No, I'm cool. So like, it's just like my little soapbox because it's just really problematic for me, man.
Yeah. Well, we do. It would really be nice to find something original coming out of Hollywood, other than. But the thing is, I don't know if it's really a new problem though, Vince, because really it kind of goes through. It's like anything else; it goes through fad. So eventually, this will like die off, and we'll go 10 years or whatever without a lot of superhero movies, and then it'll just come back. It's the same thing with like you see with like romantic comedies, those go through like seasons or whatever. Like you'll see like 10 or 12 of them come out, and then you won't see another one for a couple of years. So I mean, it's not. I think it's worse now than it ever has been, but I don't know that it's necessarily a new problem. All right, so do you have a pick of the week for us this week, Vince?
Nope. I very rarely pick, man. I hate everything.
Yeah, well, that's what you get when you're 70 years old. All right, so I have one. So I work at home now, writing in for History Magazine, and I find now that I don't have a structured day-to-day schedule, that I have a hard time keeping myself motivated. And it's the same problem I had like in college. Like I really enjoyed the freedom of not having to do, go from class to class to class like you did in high school. Anyway, so I needed to find a way to keep myself motivated. And I was like, I can do it on my own, but it takes a lot of willpower. But what I find when I'm writing is that I do very well, like in bursts. So like I'll go through and I'll write 400 words, and then I need to go, watch a YouTube video or something. So I was looking for something, and there's something called the Pomodoro technique or something. Basically, it's a timer. It's like it runs in 30 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever you want, and you just work for that entire burst, and then you take a break, and then you work for another burst, and you take another break. Now, obviously, this doesn't work for Vince. You can't just teach for 15 minutes and then go sit down for a little while. So it's obviously different professions do this very well. But I mean, I could see this working for like students or whatever. Like you do 15 minutes of work, go do something that you considered fun, and it's supposed to keep you from getting burnt out. But just working 8 hours straight, So there's an app for iOS called Be Focused, all one word, and it works on the Pomodoro technique, and it's free, and it's kind of awesome. I'm really enjoying working like that. Whether or not it will last, I don't know. We'll see. But that's my pick. Anyways, that is it for us this week. We will be back. Our next episode is on the 17th of November, and that will be Ricky's topic, and if he shows up, it would be the Flashpoint arc, whatever that
We
is.
gotta get that content, man. We gotta get that content, bud.
Yeah, definitely. Anyways, if you want to get in contact with us, you can do so. Email at the3cast.com. You can spell that however you like, with the number 3 or the spelling it out. You can follow us on Twitter at the3cast. That's just the number 3. I'm at MTWB. Ricky, who is not here, is Ricky_Williams1. Vince is VWHUI. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/the3cast with the number 3 again. And we will see you in a couple weeks with the Flashpoint arc. We'll see you then.
Take care.